Long ago, an elderly woman named Morena lived on a small farm in Northern California. For most of her life, she and her husband had worked side by side beneath bright summers and foggy winters, tending crops, feeding animals, and shaping the earth with their hands. They once owned wide stretches of land, long rows of corn, and more animals than they could count. But time had its own way of changing things. After her husband passed away, the farm grew smaller and quieter, and the work became heavier on her shoulders. Her knees ached, her steps slowed. Yet she carried on, believing duty was a kind of love that never fully leaves. Her grown daughter, Lisa, and her son-in-law, Raiden, lived with her now. At first, Morena thought their presence would bring warmth back to the old farmhouse. She hoped shared meals and shared work would help them all feel less alone. But slowly, things shifted. Lisa became impatient, snapping over small things, and often turning away when her mother tried to speak. Raiden rarely helped with chores. He slept most of the day, rising only when the sun was already fading. Morena tried to remain gentle, tried to offer help where she could, but she was tired. She felt like a guest inside her own home. One night, just after the oil lamp had been blown out, the young couple whispered in the dark. Through the thin walls, Morena heard pieces of their conversation. "If we continue like this, we will have nothing left," Raiden muttered. Lisa's voice followed, sharp and cold. "Mother must leave. We need this house for ourselves." The words slid into Marina's heart like ice. She pressed her hands together and prayed she had misheard. But a deep knowing settled inside her, heavy and unkind. At sunrise, loud noises startled her from a restless sleep. She stepped outside and froze. Her clothes lay scattered on the dusty ground. Her blankets, worn but cherished, were thrown over a broken chair. Her shoes, the ones her husband once mended for her, had been tossed near the corral. Lisa stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her eyes avoiding her mother's face. "Mother, you must leave," she said, her voice flat as stone. Morena trembled. "This is my home," she whispered, barely able to breathe the words. But the door closed in her face before she could say another thing. She sank onto the wooden step and cried until the sky turned pale with evening light. The wind moved softly around her, as if it wished to comfort her, but did not know how. She felt small, unwanted, forgotten by the ones she had loved most. Yet beneath the grief, a long-buried memory stirred. Years ago, she and her husband had quietly saved money for emergencies. They never told anyone. They kept it hidden in a stone box near the old corral, tucked under flat rocks shaped by time. It had been untouched for decades. When night fell, Morena wiped her tears and walked slowly toward the corral. She knelt down, lifted the stones with shaking hands, and found the box exactly where her husband had left it. Inside were bills and coins worth more than she remembered, enough to offer her a beginning she thought she would never have again. She held the box close to her chest and whispered her husband's name, feeling the strength of their many years together return to her, piece by piece. At dawn, she packed what remained of her belongings and walked toward the next village, unsure of what waited ahead. As she reached the road, her legs grew weak, but she kept moving. After many quiet miles, a kind farm family recognized her and invited her inside. They gave her warm bread, a cup of tea, and a small room to rest for the night. Their generosity softened the ache inside her. Before sleeping, she looked out the window at the moonlit fields and reminded herself she was still alive, still capable of choosing a new path. The next morning, She asked if there was any land for sale near the village. The family nodded and told her about a good piece of land at the edge of a meadow, rich with soil and open to the sun. Morena walked there, studied the land, and felt her heart lift. Using her hidden savings, she bought it. The neighbors helped her build a sturdy wooden house with a small porch and space for chickens. She planted corn, just as she had done in her younger days, her hands remembering what her heart had not forgotten. With each sunrise, the farm grew stronger, and so did she. A young neighbor boy named Tomas often visited her. He was gentle, respectful, and curious about all the skills she knew. He helped her carry feed, repair fences, and water the young plants. His kindness reminded her that goodness still lived in the world, even when cruelty tried to disguise itself as family. She shared stories with him about resilience, about gratitude, about finding one's way even in the darkest hour. In return, Tomas helped her laugh again. Meanwhile, in Marina's old home, things worsened for Lisa and Raiden. They did not work. They did not tend the land. Their fields dried. Their roof began to sag. Weeds grew tall around the house. They argued endlessly, each blaming the other for their misfortune. They still believed Morena had left with nothing. They comforted themselves by imagining they would one day inherit everything she had owned. One long afternoon, Raiden walked far from home, seeking work, hunger driving him farther than pride would allow. While he reached a large and beautiful new farm, he knocked on the heavy wooden door. It opened slowly, and he stepped back in shock. There stood Morena, calm and steady, her eyes holding neither anger nor triumph, just truth. "You," he whispered, unable to hide his disbelief. "Yes," she replied quietly. He explained he had no food and no work, and he begged for a chance to earn wages. She studied him for a moment and then agreed to hire him, but only under one condition. "You must not tell Lisa that this farm is mine," she said. Raiden nodded quickly. "I promise." Day after day, he worked in the fields. Morena never treated him badly. She gave him fair tasks and honest pay. The only question she ever asked was, "How is my daughter?" And each time, he answered, "She is fine," even though she was not. Morena listened, knowing his words were incomplete, but she did not push him further. One morning, Lisa followed Raiden across the long dirt road. She wanted to know why he returned home late each evening. She was surprised to see a flourishing farm, surrounded by strong fences and golden rows of corn. She walked into the yard and stopped when she saw her mother standing on the porch. "You," she cried. "You have all this while I suffer." Her voice rose in anger and despair. Morena did not shout back. She simply said, "When you finish shouting, speak to me." Lisa demanded money, demanded the house, demanded anything she could take. She insisted she deserved it. She insisted her mother owed it to her. But Morena gave her only a few coins, nothing more. Then she turned and gently closed the door. The coins slipped through Lisa's fingers as she walked away in frustration. She and Raiden spent them within days, just as they had spent every opportunity before. Soon they sold their old home and their tiny piece of land. They convinced themselves that one day the new farm would still pass to them when Morena was gone. But Morena had already made her decision. She wrote a will that said, plainly and firmly, that her farm would go to Tomas, the young boy who had helped her when she had no one. Her daughter would receive nothing. She hoped that one day Lisa might understand that inheritance is not built from blood alone, but from love, character, and compassion. Many seasons later, Morena passed away peacefully. The village honored her with respect and gratitude. When Lisa and Raiden came to claim the farm, the neighbors told them the truth. Everything now belonged to Tomas. Shocked and ashamed, the couple left the village. No one ever saw them again. So friends, remember this: even when others push you down, you can rise again. Your worth is not defined by those who mistreat you. With courage and self-respect, you can rebuild your life step by step. Kindness grows, greed destroys. Strength comes from choosing dignity, even when your heart is tired. A simple phrase carries the heart of this story: rise with dignity. It appears once, and then again here, as a closing whisper: rise with dignity. If this touched you, like, share, and subscribe.